Hi everyone, welcome back to Maximum Attack Rallying. You will see we have a slightly different setting today. There are a couple of reasons for that. One of them is very boring in that I just didn't have time to record this at home, so I'm doing it here. The other is related to this week's video, but we will come on to that shortly. Let's start with just a couple of little bits of housekeeping, shall we? The first is that finally Max McRae has been confirmed for a British Rally Championship campaign with M Sport. Isn't that good news? I think, as I understand it, he's only doing 4 rounds, so he's not doing every round, but obviously to see the McRae name back in the BRC is really good news. To see him in a factory M Sport car is really good. And I just think it's going to be fascinating to see how he develops over the course of the season. You know, he's only had one rally so far in an R5 Rally 2 type car, and it was quite an old one at the Cambrian Rally last year or the year before. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think he finished 3rd. So that gave us a taster. So I think it is going to be very interesting to see how he develops and settles into a car like that after most of his recent experience has been in lower category FIA cars. Has done some events in the Impreza, so he's not, you know, he has experience of 4-wheel drive, and he did the McRae event at Knock Hill in a Rally 2 car as well. But that's really interesting anyway. The other thing, yesterday I put an article over on socials about Heikki Kovalainen. In case you didn't realise, Heikki, who used to drive for the McLaren Formula 1 team, among many other Formula 1 teams, Lotus and Caterham and people, he moved to Japan several years ago and got involved in sports car racing there, but he also started to do some rallies. He's actually been doing rather well. He won the JN1 category of the Japanese Rally Championship the last 2 seasons in a Skoda. Unfortunately, he's having some health problems, and he has announced that he's going to have to take a step back from rallying while he has treatment for an aneurysm, which is rather scary, to be honest, isn't it? He's only 42, so yeah, I just wanted to mention that because for no other reason that I just wish him well, and I hope we see him back in the car very soon. I want to get on to the main topic for this video, which has been inspired by all of the recent chit-chat around regulations. But before we do that, I just want to quickly tell you about a partnership with Gloss Fuel and the Northwest Stages, the first round of the BRC Championship. We have a very exciting competition where you can win 2 free VIP tickets to the Northwest Stages in a few weeks. So watch this, and then we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So yes, your chance to win 2 VIP tickets to the rally and a Gloss Fuel Ultimate Bundle. So do click the link, I'll put it down in the description below. Well worth checking out. As I keep saying, we have to support the BRC this year. The entry is looking amazing for the first round. So by entering that competition, I get nothing for this, by the way. I'm not, if you click that link, I'm not getting anything for it. But I just wanted to work with those guys because I like what they do. I like what Gloss Fuel do in trying to make more sustainable car cleaning products, because I think we have to try and be more sustainable about everything. You know, electric cars aren't going to fix the world. We have to be mindful of waste and how we use things generally. So I really like that. And obviously I'm a big fan of the BRC and I want it to be successful. So if you win 2 VIP tickets, you can go and support the championship, can't you? So do that right now. Anyway, let's get to the main topic. And that topic, as I said, is relating to the regulation changes. There's been lots of talk, and I had a few people commenting on some of my posts and videos about it. And one of the comments that I've seen come up is that we need to go back to Group B, or that we need to go back to homologation specials. And I just thought it was an interesting topic. It got me thinking. Because is that actually true? And how important is the homologation special to to rallying and to motorsport? It's a tough question to answer, isn't it? Certainly, I think once you look at it in the context of Group B. Now, I'm a big fan of the homologation special, don't get me wrong, and I do think we have to be very careful about how far we stray from cars that are based on road cars. I think, personally, Rally 1 is a step too far. Once you go to a space frame chassis and scaling body shells down to fit whatever, fit your space frame, you've gone too far. It's similar to me to the touring car thing. So in the UK, we have a set of regulations called NGTC, the next generation touring car, even though it's quite an old generation touring car now. And basically, that mandates the use of a spec subframe and suspension system which you attach to whichever body shell you want. And for me, that fundamentally goes against the principle of touring car racing. So touring cars for me was always you take a family saloon or hatchback and you race it against other family saloons and hatchbacks. And yes, those cars are very heavily modified. During the super touring era of the 90s, they were extremely heavily modified, and they stretched that to the very, very limit. But fundamentally, they were that car. If you look at an NGTC car, it has push rod suspension and double wishbones. None of that is anything like a road car. It's a completely different suspension concept to most of the cars that it's based on. So for me, that's a step too far. And I think Rally 1 is similar. You've added a spec chassis effectively. So it might look a little bit like a Puma, but it's actually a slightly different size to a Puma. So it stops being the car that it's based on, doesn't it? And so that to me is a step too far. So I want to make that clear that I'm not advocating at all for the fact that we should, that there shouldn't be a link to road cars, because I think that there should, and it's really important that there is. But it's just this link back to the good old days, which is my favourite topic, and Group B that I find really, really interesting. And I actually think that we probably make at times a little bit too much of this whole homologation special thing. So speaking of that in the context of Group B specifically, because I've seen a few people say, Group B was the best, we need to bring it back. For a start, was it actually the best? I mean, yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was a high point for the sport, but I mean, yes, we had manufacturer interest. Yes, there was a lot of developments. Yes, there was massive crowds. There was lots of good things, but also rallies were just quite often decided by minutes. The cars broke down all the time. The Audis and things were useless in terms of reliability, and lots of people died. I think we need to be very careful about the pedestal that we put Group B on at times. It wasn't, it was good, don't get me wrong. It was a great era for the sport, but there was also lots of bad things about it. So there is that. But specifically the homologation thing, I think it's very interesting that people talk about homologation specials and Group B in the same sentence. Because yes, technically you could buy a road-going version of a Group B car. But who actually did? I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, no one. Lancia didn't even bother to make the 200 required cars. MG Rover or Austin Rover, whatever they were called at that particular point in history. At the end, when Group B was banned, they were left with a load of 6R4s that they were almost giving away. They were selling them for £12,000 or £13,000 or something obscene, because no one wanted them. As soon as that category became outlawed, the cars became instantly obsolete, and they weren't really even selling them in period. So I think this idea of linking road cars to Group B is probably a bit of a stretch in reality. And I mean, you could argue that the current cars and the previous generation of World Rally car, the 17 to 21 cars, were as close as we've kind of been to Group B, since that era. In terms of design, space frames and being very advanced. But was Group B that good in terms of selling road cars? I mean, I'm not silly. As a marketing link, obviously it was Peugeot used it quite effectively, but I think we need to be a little bit careful. And by extension, moving on to the era that followed Group B as the top category, Group A, which is my favourite era and is widely regarded to be the pinnacle of the sport in terms of the homologation special. It brought us the Lancia Delta Integrale, the Sierra Cosworth, the Escort Cosworth, the Subaru Impreza, the Subaru Legacy, the Mitsubishi Evo, all these fabulous cars, brilliant cars. But again, who actually had one? You know, as a kid, I grew up during that era. I adore Group A. It is brilliant, and the cars it spawned are brilliant. But as a kid, I never actually saw Escort Cosworths. I didn't know anyone that had an Escort Cosworth or a Subaru Impreza. Those cars were still very rare. So it's a tricky one, because it did spawn a fantastic generation of iconic road cars, and you can't, on the one hand, you can't diminish the impact of that. But I think we also have to be mindful of, it didn't make people go out and buy Escort Cosworths. What it did make them do is go into a Ford dealership and buy a regular Escort, didn't it? So that the impact is slightly hard to judge. And it is also worth noting, I think, at this point, that people often say that they were rallying road cars during the Group A era. And I mean, yeah, but also not really. You know, if you look under the skin of a Group A car, and I am in the fortunate position to have done that quite a few times. I own the remains of a Formula 2 kit car Escort, which is a Group A car. It's built to Group A regulations, albeit for a two-wheel drive car. And if you look under the skin of those cars, there is not really anything related to the production car. You know, the fundamentals of the body shell are the same. They took a road car body shell, but even the body shell, if you look at lots of it, there are lots and lots of changes. You know, lots of extra strengthening. You know, the body panels were massaged in places to give you extra wheel clearance, and so yeah. I mean, from a body shell, yes, obviously they're a lot closer to modern cars, or a lot of modern cars. But mechanically, I mean, if you listed the mechanical parts that are carried over from road car to Group A car, in most cases, engine block, cylinder head casting, not very much else, bits of the dashboard. You know, these cars are very advanced, and they were, you know, four-wheel drive cars especially, were active diffs, and these were not close to road cars. So I think, you know, again, we have to keep that in mind. It was a fantastic era, as I said. I'm not knocking it by any means. I'm not knocking the fact that we had that connection to road cars, because I loved it. Everyone loves it, but we just have to be a little bit careful sometimes, I think. And I think, you know, obviously there was a lot of excitement, wasn't there, when we got the GI Yaris a few years ago. We're about to get a new version of the road car, obviously, and a lot was made of that car being a homologation special, and quite rightly in some respects. It was very brave of Toyota to produce that car, and I think it has had a fantastic effect, and it has shown, hasn't it, that there is a big appetite for cars that do have a competition link. I think if you look at that car in the context of the 2021 World Rally car that it was supposed to spawn, but obviously was cancelled, and the Rally 1 car, I mean, it's a bit of a tenuous link in reality. The only real thing that the World Rally car or Rally 1 car benefited from in terms of the GI Yaris road car is the roofline, is the fundamental of the body shell, because all of the mechanical stuff is thrown away. You know, and even the wheel arches and things, they're all thrown away. All they wanted is the kind of the top part of the body shell. So that was the only real direct link. But that is a neat segue, kind of, into perhaps the more important part, is that where you do get a nice link between GI Yaris road car and rally cars is in Rally 2, which obviously that car has come out this year. And again, all of the suspension is different. Most of the bodywork is, or, you know, the outer body panels are different, even though the fundamentals of at least some of the chassis are the same. Obviously, the suspension pickup points on the body shell are changed significantly, but you do have a bit more of a link. You know, at least it uses the same fundamental engine, for example, and whereas the World Rally car and the Rally 1 car use a 4-cylinder engine, which you can't even get in a GI Yaris. So, but you know, you do have more of a link, and obviously you've got the one make championships for the Yaris in various countries, Spain and Italy and Japan, which is is a direct link, isn't it? Because they take GR Yaris road cars, and yes, they've become a bit more modified with sequential gearboxes, but fundamentally it's a modified road car. And that is perhaps the thing that Toyota should have made more of than the link to the Rally 1 car or to the, you know, the cancelled WRC car. But I think it shows the tricky dynamic in a way, doesn't it? With how to use one to sell the other, and how to transfer technology from one car to the other. So, as I said, I am a huge fan of homologation specials, and I love it. I love the Escort Cosworth, one of my favourite cars. Love the Impreza, one of my favourite cars. You know, these are some of my favourite rally cars and some of my favourite road cars. So I think we have to use that, and we have to use it to entice people into the sport and make the sport attractive. But I think we also have to be a little bit mindful of getting stuck on the idea that rally cars have to be based directly on road cars, because they don't. I think Rally 2 demonstrates that. Rally 2 is the perfect formula. There is just enough road car to make it sellable, but the cars are also fast enough and technically advanced enough to be great rally cars. And I think it is the perfect balance. But the final thing that I just want to touch on is that it, as well as that you also need to remember that a car doesn't need to be a homologation special. That is such a difficult word to say. You don't need a car to be homologated and fancy for it to be a great road car or an iconic rally car. If you think about my favourite era in a sport, my favourite era is the 90s, but my favourite sub-category / era is Formula 2 and the kit cars. And not even the kit cars, the Group A versions of the F2 cars as well. And if you that produce some fantastically iconic cars and brilliant action, and you know, it is now recognized as another, you know, really important and exciting era. But none of those cars were homologation specials. A Ford Escort, which is, you know, obviously my personal favorite, that car was never designed with competition in mind. Ford decided to use it for competition because they wanted to make the range a bit more appealing. 306, that wasn't a competition car, it was a road car. Megane, that wasn't a competition car, it was a road car. They were designed as road cars that people happened to take rallying, and it was the same with all of the lower categories during that era. You know, you had 1300 Suzuki Swifts and things. They were really popular rally cars, and they were just based on road cars. Yes, there were a few homologation specials, you know, the 205 Rally and Citroen AX Sport, I think, Nova Sport. So you had some little 1300 homologation specials and a few outliers, but generally they were just cars, and some of them became extremely iconic and well-known rally cars while just being based on regular cars, which people could actually buy. You know, if you think of the 205 GTI, for example, massively it's probably the hot hatch ever, isn't it, in a way? And sorry if you're a Golf owner, you probably disagree with that. But you know, it is the hot hatch in many respects, but wasn't really homologation special, was it? But it was a hugely successful rally car, remains a hugely successful and popular rally car. And that finally leads me to the car I'm sitting in right now, my Peugeot 208 GT. Also not a homologation special, but it is used for rallying, isn't it? The 208, this generation of 208 is the basis of the Rally 4 car, which is a very successful rally car in the lower categories. So this isn't a homologation special. I'm certainly not going to pretend that it is, but if you're a normal person with a normal budget, this is cars like this, cars like the Corsa, the Clio. You can buy a car that is used for rallying still, can't you? I mean, the manufacturers could do a bit more. Wouldn't it be nice to see, you know, a rally edition of this car, for example? But, you know, it shows, doesn't it, that homologation isn't everything. And I think that is my point, to try and wrap this up, because I've been waffling. Homologation cars are brilliant, but they are not the be-all and end-all. We don't necessarily need them. Yes, it would be nice to have them. Yes, it's nice to see manufacturers linking their rally program to their road cars. I want us to do that, but they don't necessarily need to build specialist cars to do that. I would love to buy a Rally 2 Fiesta. The Rally 2 Fiesta is probably almost my favourite Rally 2 car, the GR Yaris, maybe slightly more, but that's nothing to do with the road car, by the way. But I would also love a Fiesta ST road car. I've driven Fiesta ST road cars. They're brilliant. I've made a video about one a few years ago, in fact. But it shows that you don't need it. So I think the manufacturers could do more in terms of how they promote it. But there are still rally cars out there that you can buy as road cars. They're just in the lower categories, just as they've been since the dawn of rallying time. So anyway, let's wrap it up there. What I will just say is do drop a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Do you think I'm waffling and talking rubbish and that everything should be a homologation special? Or do you think that rallying can still thrive without them? Do let me know below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget that Northwest Stages competition, so you get a chance to go to the first round of the BRC. And I will see you again in the next episode.